Hello everybody, welcome or welcome back. I am Hazel and this is my channel all about ice cream. The first thing I will say is an apology in case the audio is still messed up. As you know, or if you watched my last video, as you know, it came to light that my audio has only been recorded in one channel. So people who are listening to this on headphones are only getting it through one ear. I didn't realise because I never edit these with headphones in, but still, I would like the audio to be at least decent. I had a few ideas. One of them was a voice recorder. That did not work. Even a really quite expensive one was of poor quality. So what I'm now doing is I'm recording video on my camera and audio on my laptop. I don't know how that's going to work. For all I know, I'm actually typing this and subtitling it, so my apologies if that's the case. So it's a new year. This is the first ice cream that I am making in 2025. Because I put the video out on New Year's Day, but I made them in the latter part of December 2024. And this week is going to be tea ice cream. Now, last week was also tea ice cream, but last week was tea ice cream, matcha tea, slightly different way of doing it because I was following someone else's recipe. Well, I always follow someone else's recipe to an extent, but I was very much following someone else's recipe, not my usual style. This is tea ice cream in my usual style. Now, there are two ways of making tea ice cream. This is the one that is easier, I've got quotations around that, because it is not a custard base. This one is just a cream base, but you don't even start with cream. You start with making your what I refer to as tea water. Now, you may also remember I was freaking out about, do I have enough tea? This is my tea selection. My hand is out of shot. There we are. This is my tea selection, and this is only my loose leaf teas. So I think we should be fine. The recipe does specify this is green tea. Now, all of my green teas, I've got that one, I think that is one, and that one, and I thought I had another one. Yeah, all of my green teas are flavoured. Now, there's no problem with using a flavoured tea, but I didn't want to do it for this. I just wanted this to be tea. So they will be taken away. Which leaves us with this selection here. Now, again, one of those is flavoured, the white chocolate. Chocolate would be an interesting one to try and add. You can do it. You don't ultimately end up with that much tea in the ice cream. So yes, whilst you would melt down a bit of the chocolate that's in it and it would add to the fat, it's not going to make a difference. If you really want to use chocolate tea, use chocolate tea. And then we have four. Now, out of those, I'm not personally a massive fan of Russian Caravan. You may wonder why I bought it. The answer is I didn't. People buy me tea quite a lot. I do quite like tea. I get through it at a fair rate, although the boxes left over may not signify that. I don't think I've personally bought tea in about 6 years because I get gifted it. And I like to try different teas, but Russian Caravan was just a little bit too smoky for me. And then we get three. We get the Assam, which is probably closest to what you think of as just a normal tea. Darjeeling, which is still normal tea, which is what most people think of would be black tea. But Darjeeling is known as the champagne of teas. It's quite a delicate black tea, or oolong tea. And I'll be honest with you, I don't exactly know the difference between regular tea, quotations again, and oolong. It tends to come out a little bit more delicate, a little bit more of a subtle flavour. And I could use any of these. I'm torn between Darjeeling or the oolong. Let's use Darjeeling, and I will tell you why later when I get into the history of tea. So, annoyingly to me, there are no hard and fast rules for how to make the tea flavoured water. I generally work on, so the recipe wants 25% of the recipe to be the tea water. Now, for supply chain reasons, I'm going to be making 600 grams of this recipe. I wanted to do 800. I worked out all my numbers on 800, but then I couldn't get enough cream for 800. So we're going to be doing 600 grams of ice cream mixture. So if I want 25%, I need 150 grams of tea water. Now, by the time you've put the water on the tea and the tea itself has soaked up some of the water, you get roughly 40% of what you put in back out as water. So if I want 150 grams, that only represents 40. So I have to times that by 2.5375. Just for ease of numbers, I'm going to round that and make it 400. And then the recipes. So the recipes for this were interesting. One of them said take 3 parts of a cup. A part is not a measurement of anything. You can have 1 part water to 2 part tea. That would be an insane ratio. That's not the ratio. But 3 parts of a cup doesn't mean anything. The other recipe said you take a cupful of tea and you add enough water to cover it, which turned out to be roughly a pint of boiling water. But when I work out the ratios of it, you want an approximately an eighth of the amount that you're making, as in the total amount you're putting in tea, and the rest of it in water. So I'm making 400 grams because I want to try and get 150 out of it. So divided 400 by 8 is 50. So I want 50 grams of tea, and then I want 350 of boiling water. Now let me get the water to boil first, because I'm British and we have the joys of electric kettles. I'll just get that going. I do wish they'd put a... So you shouldn't boil more water than you actually need, is generally good practice, but my kettle doesn't actually have it in measurements. It has 1 cup. Do I want a cup? Is that about right? I don't know. So that can boil away in the background. And we want 50 grams of tea in the end. So the nice thing about tea is you can also reuse it. So this is not a waste of all these tea leaves. 50 grams of it. There we go. Oh, that was dead on as well, and then I had to go a little bit too far ahead. So that's most of that pot, but remember, I can dry this out, reuse it. It's not a waste of tea. And this is obviously not the ratios that you would use for making a cup of tea. You want a lot more flavour to this because you're then going to be diluting this with cream. Whilst my kettle boils, a brief history of tea. The tea's origins are shrouded in myth and legend. You get the whole, the emperor had the leaf delicately fall into his cup of boiling water. But certainly we know that tea is being drunk in China, first of all, and it made its way over to Europe fairly early on via, first of all, the land roads, the Silk Road, which is not purely for silk, that was used for general trade across from the Far East into Europe via generally the markets of Venice, and later on by sea. And that carries on quite nicely for a while. I will not be going to heavy topics about things like the Boston Tea Party, which all comes down to Britain and their monopoly over the tea that was entering into Europe via the East India Company, the British East India Company, because lots of countries had their own East India Company. But then we get to, so for all this time, tea is coming from China. Tea is grown nowhere else apart from China. So we are relying on the good humour of China to let us have tea. Britain then went to war with China over the right to flood their country with drugs. The opium that was being grown in India. My water's nearly boiled. So I may pause this story whilst I pour the water. And in response to that, they realised that their tea supply may not be as guaranteed as they want it to be. And Britain at the time drank a lot of tea. Britain still drinks a lot of tea. They're not the country that has the highest tea consumption. I think that's Turkey. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. Right, so brief pause whilst we weigh out 350 grams of boiling water. And for black tea, you do want it to be boiling. For green tea, you wouldn't want it to be boiling. You'd want it to be more like about 80, 85. Oh, I hope this is big enough. Yeah, it should be big enough. Just swirl it around, try and get all the tea actually submerged. In 360, that's fine. And then just push the tea down just to try and get it, make sure it's all submerged in the water, and then put something over it because you want to limit evaporation as much as possible. And that now just... Apologies, my battery died. I'm not really sure how my battery died. It said it was on about 40%, but I suppose recording is quite heavy on battery life. I'm just going to try and get through this as quickly as I can because I still don't have an amazing battery. What do I need? I needed 150 grams of this water to come through. And as I'm doing this, I'm thinking maybe it wasn't the most sensible thing to pour it straight into the mixing bowl, but never mind. We've done it now. I think I'd reached a point where the Chinese are restricting tea and the British did not like that. So they're trying to grow tea now in their own empire. That's basically 150. There we go. And there's a tiny bit of water left in there. I don't know how well that comes through on the camera, but that is not too far out of my calculations. And then you need 50% of this recipe to be whipping cream. Now, I could only get a 300 milliliter pot, although literally as I was waiting for this to brew, I got a message from my usual suppliers to say that their cream delivery has actually come through and my cream is in there. So it doesn't help me out for this week, but actually it gives me enough cream for next week, I think. So I'm definitely going to go and pick that up in a minute. So I need 300 grams of this, which is going to be this whole pot, really. 297, I just need to scrape it. So yes, we now want to grow tea in the British Empire, but we don't have the expertise. That was just me knocking the camera, my apologies. We don't have the expertise, we don't even have the plants. So in the mid-1840s, a botanist, sure, that's near enough, it's 299.5. In the mid-1840s, a botanist called Robert Fortune, and then this recipe is also 5% of single cream. So that will make it, 30 would be 10%, no, 60 would be 10%, 30 would be the 5%. Robert Fortune is going around China, pretending to be Chinese from another province because British people weren't allowed to go that far away from the ports. What do we need? We needed 30 grams of this. And in the process, stealing their plants, stealing their knowledge, taking them over into India, where very few of them grow. They largely didn't make it. In the sense of actually successfully getting the plants into India, the whole thing was quite unsuccessful. You did get the expertise in there, but most tea that we have now that comes from India is actually still from Indian originated plants. I've once again forgot to get something out. I didn't get out the little measuring pot for the sugar. So I don't bother with it when I'm making a custard because it's going to get whisked a lot, but when I'm making a cream base, I need to measure the sugar into it. However, the quirk in this, and the reason I went for Darjeeling tea, is the tea grown in Darjeeling was from the Chinese plants. So the recipes I'm using, one's written before this happened, so at that time all the tea was coming from China. One's written after, so there would have been a fair bit of Indian tea in there as well. So you want, is it 20? Yeah, it's 20% of sugar, so 120 grams of sugar. I also need to get the spoon out in a minute. But yes, Darjeeling, the teas grown in the Darjeeling area are some of the only teas that are actually from the original Chinese transplanted plants. Most teas grown from India are from Indian origin plants. And that's why I used the Darjeeling tea, just because it had a nice little link to the history there. Let me just try and get a spoon. Because if I forgot to get the measuring jug out, I forgot to get the spoon out as well. That feels like, that doesn't feel right. That feels like my ice cream scoop. I have several ice cream scoops, but I've got a new one as well. Got it from a friend. And that's the spoon I wanted. Just try not to knock the camera too much. And then all you do is you add your sugar whilst whisking it in. I use the stand mixer and the balloon whisk attachment there. So just add it spoon by spoon. Break up some of the little lumps there. My apologies if this battery goes again. The battery will be fully charged by the time I start recording next, but it only got up to about 20% charge in the time I was waiting for the tea to develop. So there's a small chance it's going to go at some point whilst I'm adding it to the machine. My apologies if that's the case. But I've more or less finished what I find the most interesting part on the history of tea. Tea's got a long, long history. There's other interesting stories in there as well. But I've just always found that one great. The idea of someone just going around China pretending to be from a different part of China while trying to steal all their knowledge, it just makes me laugh. Now, as you whisk this mixture, it is probably going to froth. Remember, proteins unravel in the presence of acid, and there is a lot of acid in tea. There's tannic acid in tea. That's the thing that makes it feel a strong cup of tea feel quite tight. So don't panic if it froths. It will unfroth itself, and you can always strain it if you're particularly bothered about the froth before you start putting it into the ice cream machine. So that's probably mixed enough. And that, I think that can just go into the fridge in this bowl. Just taste a little bit off of the whisk. What do you like? Coffee won the war of which hot drink gets to be put in ice cream. I like tea ice cream. It's one of my favourites. And it's an important ice cream base to be able to do as well. Will I go through that now, or I might go through that more once I've shown you the other way of doing this too. Just rearrange a few things in my fridge. Because I made, people that watched the ice cream lolly video, I did make the curry that my friend bought me. It's delicious. It's mostly onion. There's no heat to it. It's mostly onion, and I'm mildly intolerant of onions, so it makes about 4 portions, and that's 4 decent sized portions. I'm gonna have to freeze 2 of them, but for now they are still just chilling out in my fridge. But they've had to move to make room for the mixing bowl. And then I'm going to dry off let my tea leaves dehydrate. And when I come back, I will have fully charged batteries for the camera and me. But mostly the camera's the important bit here. And that will just be the re-whisking and the churning and then the tasting. I told you this is quite an easy recipe. Once you can get the tea water, everything else is just adding cream and mixing. There's nothing difficult here. There's nothing difficult in any of them, but this is even more simple than usual. But anyway, I shall see you back soon for the re-whisking. And welcome back. I had to do some interesting gymnastics to get the camera and the laptop to start recording at the same time. But the interesting thing is you're not going to know that there's even an issue, because the video that I talk about the issue isn't coming out until next week. But basically, I had to decide whether I was going to churn 3 ice creams in one night, or whether I would prefer to assemble and disassemble the filming equipment again. And I chose the latter for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to film 3 ice creams in one night. It's a lot of ice cream. There's a little spatula. Did I say film ice cream or churn ice cream? Whichever one I said, I meant churn ice cream. It's a lot of ice cream to churn in one go. And whilst my machine will do it, I've still got to wash the thing up 3 times, wash everything else up 3 times. It's just much easier to not. And also, in spite of the fact that they're not trapped in a torture chamber, I don't like shutting the cats away for too long in a row. So I have decided that I will be churning the tea ice cream in a plain cream base on the same day that I've made it, which is today. Just get the stand mixer down in there and just get that gently recombining. And for reasons that mostly come down to expiry dates on cream, the mixtures for next week's ice cream, which, spoiler alert, is going to be tea ice cream in a custard base, are also already in my fridge and already chilling. But they are not going to be churned today. A, they need to chill a bit longer. And B, my whole thing of doing one tonight is that I then didn't have to do multiple in one night. So this one at least is relatively straightforward. I'm not even going to strain this one. I just need to gently recombine it. Don't want to go too far though, because whilst froth will calm itself down, it won't calm itself down instantly. camera recording audio? It shouldn't be. I turned off audio recording. And yet I just saw a little spike on one of the channels. Great, that might make editing fun. I suppose it's relatively straightforward. You just mute it on the video and add the sound recording over the top of it. I reckon that's probably recombined enough. So I'm going to quickly move the camera equipment over to the ice cream machine, which is churning in the background, and then pour it in and get it to churn. See you in a minute. And then here we are over at the ice cream machine. It has been pre-chilling for 7 minutes. That's fine. And then let me just get a plate to put that on. That being the balloon whisk in my stand mixer, which has now fallen into my ice cream. Yep, that's great. Definitely want a plate for it now. There we go. Oh, it tastes really nice. As long as you like tea, it's hard to go wrong with tea ice cream. So I'm going to have to pour from this mixing bowl, which I don't really like doing. It's much harder to control the pour from a bowl than it is a jug. Oh, actually, that's not got so far gone too badly. And remember, this isn't a whole portion. This was only 600 grams. So that in there. There's not really much left over in the machine. I don't think I might just spatula that out. Scrape it off. There's not much left over. It didn't go in initially. And then that will churn. Probably won't take too long because there's not much of it and it is quite a cold mixture. So I reckon if I came back in about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, that should be done. So I shall see you back when we have tea ice cream. So the tea ice cream has churned. It took a little bit longer than I thought it might, actually. So I put it in the more or less 50 and now we're at 24. So yeah, a bit longer than I thought, but never mind, these things take as long as they take. And I just need to, where's my spatula? There it is, not my spatula, my little silicone scoop thing. So I've only got a small pot for it because I don't expect it's made an awful lot of ice cream. It will make more than you put in though because of the inclusion of air. That's part of what an ice cream machine is doing. As we saw demonstrated in the ice cream lollies. Air is needed to an extent in ice cream. The official word for how much percentage of it is overrun. So if you get a very high overrun, you can get, commercial companies will make them into sort of 100% overrun, so they will double their amount with air. You're not really going to end up with that in an ice cream that you make at home. And overrun confuses me, not how it happens, but just I wouldn't have thought you'd want it in a premium ice cream. Oh gosh, maybe I should have had a bigger pot. I don't think I'm going to get much more in there. In a premium ice cream, I wouldn't have thought you'd want loads of air in it. And yet people talk about overrun like it's a good thing. I'd want limited overrun. Air doesn't hold flavour. I want my ice creams to be flavourful and to demonstrate the ingredients that I've put into them. I don't want them to just be full of air. But then again, I'm not making this to sell it. If you can get 100% overrun, you've doubled your product for no extra cost. Dairy's free. It's about as much as I'm getting in there. Lid. There's the lid. I put on it one of my Dymo labels. Tea in cream. And that can go into the newly fairly clear freezer. And then where it will be joined tomorrow by, on top of that, where it will be joined tomorrow by by two versions of tea in a custard base, but you won't see that until next week What you will see is me tasting the tea ice cream. Even though I know I like this one, the video where I didn't taste it just because I knew that I already liked it, people commented that I didn't taste it. So I'm going to taste it. So I shall see you tomorrow for that. I might even film that. Actually, that makes a good use of time, doesn't it? I'll probably film that whilst one of the others is churning. Excellent. Got tomorrow evening sorted out. See you back tomorrow. Hello, everybody. When you watch next week's video, because obviously you will watch next week's video, you'll know that I debated whether I was going to film the tasting of this one, which is the tea and cream ice cream, at the same time that I was churning the tea in custard ice cream, which, remember, spoiler alert, is next week's video. I decided ultimately, yes, I was going to. I sort of wish I hadn't, because I live in fear of my laptop dying. My cats chewed the lead, and that's on me. I'm the owner. I should have stopped them. The problem is I stopped them when I was here, but when I wasn't around, they chewed it when I just didn't see them. So it's been repaired and it's held in there quite well, but I live in fear of it dying, and because it's quite an old laptop now, it would be really hard to replace that lead. And as I moved it over from where I was filming to be closer to here, it wouldn't turn back on again. So I did my usual thing of just jigging things around, took it over to a different socket, works fine on a different socket, but I know this socket was fine as well. Came back and it worked fine. But I sort of wish I'd left it alone. So I think in future I'm going to do less moving of the laptop as much as possible. But I sort of wanted to do it now because if anywhere goes wrong with trying to sync up the video with the separately recorded audio, it's going to be this bit. You can't see me talking for the rest of it. And I know I find it really annoying when the when the speech is out of sync with what I can see. But if I'm a half a second out when you can't see it, it doesn't make much difference. This is where it will go wrong. So I had an idea of how to do it, but I won't know if it will work. But then I can play around with that tonight, and if I don't think that works, I can maybe do it a different way when I film the custard ones. But I've chatted for too long and this is probably melted. So this is the tea in plain cream. A little bit bumpy on the top there because it just stuck to the top of the lid. It's an extremely soft texture. From what I remember, this recipe is softer anyway, though. And that is just such a nice ice cream. I was trying to remember if I've ever made it with just plain tea before. I mean, I know I've made it with flavoured teas. And yes, I have, but I use Lapsang Souchong, which falls into the same category as Russian Caravan. It's a bit smoky. I don't really like that flavour. So this is probably the first time I've made it with just plain tea. And this is probably one of my favourite ice creams. Like, I could just eat all of this. You get tea and lavender a lot as a flavour combination. I look forward to summer when I've got lavender flowers. And I could combine the two of them then. I can put the lid back on, otherwise I'll eat all of that. And I promise to let people try some of this one. Because what I tend to find is I go into work and I say, oh yeah, I've made this ice cream this week. And they all go, oh, I'm really not sure about that. And then they try them, and apart from the really weird ones, they tend to like them. So maybe they should just trust me in future that I am actually a decent ice cream maker. But so that was tea and cream. I've got tea and custard churning away, and then I'll have another one. And then next week you'll get to see what the tasting of those came out as. I suspect I'm not going to like them as much as tea ice creams, but it's quite a versatile recipe. And it's quite an important one to get to grips with quite early on. So whilst I may not like them necessarily in themselves as tea and custard, being able to do a water infusion in custard will probably come in handy. But you know what? I might find that I think that the custard flavour suits the tea, and that is a better way of making tea ice cream. Have I ever tried tea and custard ice cream before? No, I haven't. I've hypothetically run the numbers on it, but I've never actually made it. So that'll be my first time seeing how it tastes. I said I wasn't going to compare it to this one. And I'm not for flavour. I'm sort of not for flavour. But for flavour combination, I might compare it and see what I think. I'll figure that out when it comes to time to tasting those. So next week is more tea ice cream. After that, it won't be tea. I'll think of a different flavour for the week after that. I don't know what that flavour will be yet. I don't even know. So I'm filming this. And then I'm also filming next week. So technically, I'm not making an ice cream next week. I don't know whether I just won't make an ice cream next week. I don't always make an ice cream. Or there are some things that I've been wanting to play around with that I might then make next week, but just not film, so that I know a little bit more of what to do. I will show you some experiments, but generally not method experiments, usually more flavour experiments. And certainly not method experiments where I really don't think they're going to work, which is what I want to play around with. So I probably won't film anything from my perspective next week. You will still see a video next week. And then the week after that, we'll be back to filming one at a time, hopefully, because I found it so much easier to film one at a time. Trying to battle between two of them, it's not been fun. But anyway, I will see you next week for the tea and custard, and then mystery flavour after that.